In an ever-evolving digital landscape, for your business to thrive, you must adapt or die. Welcome to Marketing in the Age of AI, the podcast helping you harness the power of AI and marketing tools to revitalize and grow your business. And now here's your host, marketing expert and author of Authentic Marketing in the Age of AI, Emmanuel Rose.
Welcome to this episode of Marketing in the Age of AI. Today, we're going to dig into the idea of what it takes to upskill staff and manage the change management part of AI implementations and how we can balance between what is cutting edge of technology and how we help the people in our organizations work to adapt, adopt, and exploit this amazing technology. My guest today is Yvette Brown, and she's the co-founder of X-Promo's Marketing Mastery. Yvette has began her entrepreneurial journey at 23, starting a promotions agency that launched a remarkable, ongoing 36-year career. Over the years, she predominantly served diverse enterprise-level brands such as Mattel Toys, Makita Power Tools, and Sage Software, consistently delivering campaigns that exceeded expectation. Today, she is passionately focused on empowering professionals to control their destiny by upskilling into AI. Yvette, thank you so much for spending time with me today.
That was an awesome read on that bio. I think I need to take that recording and use it for everything I'm doing going forward.
All right, you just let me know. You let me know when you need me to read your bio for you. I'll be happy to chime in.
Awesome.
Well, I mean, I always like to talk to other professionals who've been around for a while and have seen the tech changes over long careers, and I know you'll appreciate the fax machine and going to the library to do research in journals to then find prospects' addresses to mail them letters. And then, did you ever think at all in your career that we would be so instantaneously connected to prospect and prospect data?
No, not necessarily. I mean, when I started my career, when we started the agency, it's funny you should mention fax machine because that was literally the very first big purchase we made, right? It was $1,700. I had to put it on a Circuit City credit card, and like that was our big purchase, and it was pretty magical, because before that I had worked at an agency I was at a satellite office on the West Coast, but we were headquartered in Chicago, and everything we did was FedEx when we were dealing with clients and things like that. So even just having a fax machine was like, wow. And to your point, I think we have seen so many evolutions over time. I remember, talking about like what your nomenclature was going to be on your email address, right? Because you only had 8 characters. So how are you going to set that up, and how is that going to work across the enterprise? But I think for us, for a small business, any business that's going to succeed over time, you have to evolve and adapt. And I've always been intrigued by those new technologies and new evolutions. And that's one thing we've always done is, and you appreciate this, is like the core essence of marketing and like what makes people buy and, how to connect with them has remained the same. It's just that we have way better tools to do that. And as long as we keep, integrating those into what we're doing and what we're offering to clients, they keep coming back. So
yeah. Why do you think that the marketing department is so forward with technology? I think way more in most organizations than other departments or parts of the business.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, part of it might just be how we think. I think it's in the marketing department, and sales, I think, is the same to a certain degree. Is we kind of have to stay at the front end of trends because we have to be able to connect with our audience. And so I think part of that is, I don't know if it's required or it becomes, it attracts people like that who are trying to kind of think about what's ahead and what's coming. But it's certainly in our best interest to use the newest tools and opportunities, and AI represents so much potential there.
Yeah, without a doubt. I'm interested to hear about your perspective on how the adoption and the education of like Gen Z versus millennial versus X versus boomer, and what you're seeing, any stratification in those different demos like that.
That's funny. It's funny you should say. I know that you're the generations guy, and I love that. That's always been a most interesting topic for me. I remember in my career when I first read my first book about, the difference in generations and how it made so much sense. And in part, that's because I'm a Gen X who really didn't relate to everything going on in Boomerville.
Nor do we still understand Boomerville.
Right. And to that point, for what we've been doing in upskilling people, I've actually worked with folks that are in their 70s, down to the younger folks. And I have to say, the group that is probably most resistant is the Gen Z. It's my daughter, right? And it's in part because they are more troubled by some, in her case, and this is the case, and I have done some teaching in front of groups of design students and things like that, is like that group in particular, so I might be biased. They are really troubled by how these LLMs have been trained. And, the fact that you can, output an image, but it's basically based on a body of knowledge of some artist's style is like really, it's annoying and taboo. And, I've really walked away from doing a lot of that because I get so much pushback from my daughter on it. So I think they're a little more, they're a little more, the younger generation, I think, is a little more wary about it, from that standpoint. But I think that's who they are in general. And as usual, I think millennials are kind of somewhere in between. So,
yeah, that's interesting. One of the things that I saw from some research was that Gen X has the least adoption of AI, and I thought that was really fascinating. I'm not, I have a couple working theories, but I'd love to hear why you think that is.
Yeah, I think I've saw that, and I was at the moment I was a little, I take any surveys like that with a grain of salt, and because you kind of have to drill down into who all did they talk to. It might have been that Gen X just didn't reply because we didn't care. It was like one of those.
Exactly.
Right?
Don't waste my time.
Exactly.
Get off my lawn.
Exactly. So I think that is possible. I don't know. I would love to hear your theory on why you think that might be the case. They're in the right age. I mean, I'm at the elder end of Xville, and that puts everybody else probably in their 50s, like late 40s. So it seems like they would be in the sweet spot for that. And, I would take the survey with a grain of salt before I would say that there's a reason.
I know we don't trust anything from corporations or the government, right?
Yeah,
That's
I
just
need
the
to see
standard.
how many people they surveyed and how they did it, and whether or not the organization that did it had a purpose behind it.
Yeah, exactly. Whose agenda?
That's
Now,
right.
I think part of it is the kind of timeline position of the career. Like they're not doing a lot of the work anymore.
Yeah.
And so they have the SMEs or the creatives that are doing stuff, and they don't have to do it. And I've met a lot of people who are like, well, I'm gonna just I'm gonna retire before I have to deal with all this stuff. So that's a prevailing philosophy, which is fascinating to me.
Yeah, I'm just gonna tap out before I have to worry
Yeah,
about it.
yeah,
And it's interesting because, and is the way we approach what we do is we start with your title and your role,
yeah,
and we literally, align everything to your deliverables. And regardless of what level you're at, AI has a capability of helping you get your stuff done in half the time,
yeah.
roughly, depending on the
Yeah.
task. Yeah,
I mean, yeah, half or way less than that, right? I mean,
yeah.
some of the processes that we've like just the podcasting processes we've taken from 2.5 hours down to about 30 minutes. So,
It's
the leverage,
insane,
yeah,
right?
really is it's inconceivable. And
Yeah.
with really good product, right? So,
Mhm.
I'm really interested to hear about your educational framework and how you take somebody from AI curious to AI conversant, yeah, with the work that you're doing.
Yeah, well, what we did, and actually our process, our training is actually very recently certified by a third-party nonprofit AI think tank called the Thea Institute, which is
Cool.
pretty cool, and we're really proud of that. And by going through that process, it made us get much more rigorous about both what the knowledge domains were that we were teaching, as well
Yep.
as how we were going to evaluate and make sure that you knew what we were sharing. But in short, we kind of take you through a process that starts with, let's just get familiar with the tools, and let's show you, a lot of people that are just dabbling don't even know that you can, do a voice to voice thing. They don't
Right.
know that you can upload a file. They don't know that you can output code. It's like all of those things. And so it's kind of like starts out with a little bit of a discovery on that level. And then we kind of walk them through how to create an SOP, right? Like how it can take any one of your deliverables on your role plan that we help them create, and how you can create a whole process for that deliverable. And we
Nice.
kind of just like baby step them through. We talk about how to tap into expert frameworks and how to get those people to evaluate your problem and have you choose a solution. And then, it's kind of like at that point that we start walking them into creating their own GPT, right? Sort of
Nice.
like baby step into it,
Yep.
always focused on guardrails, bias, and, governance, making sure it aligns with what you want internally and that type of thing. And, once we talk about a GPT, then we sort of go into a workflow, right? And then we start to get into, things that are kind of cool is we go into what the future, because people at this point start to see, oh my gosh, this thing actually works, right? I can see
Yes.
the possibilities. I can see how it's actually doing this, right? How it's giving me back this time. And we start to go into, okay, well, let's look at like, three horizon plan, and, what AI says the future is going to look like and how your role might evolve. And we have a whole kind of, session that goes through that, to help identify, in part to help people see, oh my gosh, my role is likely going to change, and here's how it might as the models evolve, as we get to agents and all of that, in earnest, that are
Right.
working well. And then we can build out and evaluate, because that's kind of when like their head explodes a little bit, right? Is they're like, oh wow, I see this in a big picture way. And the latter half of our training is really aligned with OpenAI's use case scaling framework, which is something they came out with late last year that kind of said, hey, because companies were doing AI pilots and they were like doing okay on the launch, but then they were sort of, fizzling out, right?
Sure.
They weren't picking up steam. They weren't, repeating and all of that. So the use case scaling framework goes through how to take this workflow and how to really crush it and really like dial in what your KPIs are, dial in how to make sure it's working, what those metrics are, and make sure it's working, and what to do if it's not, right? And like
Yeah.
where the human needs to be in the loop, and like all those things. And you walk away with that with a pilot playbook, right? So it's like, this now applies to anything in your organization, but this is how you can know that this workflow that we've helped you, you've built along the way with your assignments is going to work within your organization. And then at the end, we do like a center of excellence sort of overview for that, like how you can take that and now build this thing that you can use throughout your organization. And it has the guardrails, it has all kind of like the pieces you need to have built something that works, this tiny thing, and now you can start replicating it around your organization. You kind of have the framework on all the questions you need to ask about risk and about, the guardrails and all that type of stuff to make it work within whatever your, plan is.
Have you found that companies are able to take and do this process with you and then internalize it, or do you stay with them through like the next round of projects also?
The answer, as all good marketing answers are, is it depends, right?
Yeah.
It depends on the organization and where, in part, the rest of their AI-ness is, like, do they have a department they've sort of, built internally that can start handling this or not? Oftentimes, although, I think some folks think that, oh yeah, we can just share this with our teams, but then they realize, yeah, I think we kind of need you to do this with some of our other teams. And so it kind of becomes, the first group turns into more groups because they really need to get the people skilled up,
Yep,
because,
absolutely.
what happens, and this is like, I see this kind of like, if you remember, like when Salesforce first came out, right? Like
Yeah.
Salesforce is an amazing tool, but there's a lot to it. It's complicated. There's, and with any shiny object that, our teams are buying, there's usually not enough training, right? And so you end up not using it regularly. And I think that's what we're trying to do, is sort of build this little process so people will keep using it, but they kind of need to be exposed to that fluency so they can start taking it over on their own.
I think it's an interesting divergence, and I'll just share this with you. Like, there's the personal productivity part, and then there's like the organizational, administrative changes, right? And I think that for me, I really try to draw those hard lines, like, hey, this is how I need to train you, but the rest of this stuff is really a tech deployment. It's not you having to learn about the newest version of Llama and how the agentification is going to work inside a Llama, right? Like, you need to know how to do your job, but not the IT deployment. I don't know. What do you think about that, Yvette?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. But because the thing about it is, and this is where a lot of organizations are also getting hung up, is on the connecty part, right?
Yeah.
And not just connection, but, there's risk, there's concerns about risks, and that's like an evolving, concern.
Yep.
But, most organizations have been around for a while. They have legacy silos all over the place, right? And they have to figure out how to get those connected and to work, because if you want that great, dashboard, you're going to have to connect a whole bunch of different things. And sometimes that gets a little dicey.
Yeah.
But the way we look at it, and this is why, I kind of push back on these like sort of one touch create a workflow thing, is that you need to understand what a workflow is. You need to understand what you're trying to do, why you're doing it, if it makes sense to do it. I mean, like one of the things we walked through, in one of those earlier modules is, do I even need a workflow for this? Like, how often do I do this thing? Can I just have, have this in my prompt library that when I need to run this thing, once a quarter, like whatever, just run the prompt, right? You don't necessarily need a workflow for everything. And so we're trying to teach people to think, right? To critically think about what they need to get done and where AI can enable them to do it, instead of just, cutting and pasting and calling it a day.
Yeah, I think it's just fascinating. The more I get into this, that the change management activities are way more important than any of the technological things that are happening on the.
But they always are.
I know. I think I got a little starry-eyed with the whole thing and the excitement of it. I'm like, oh my God, the organizations are moving so slow
Yeah.
adoption rate. I mean, that's what I'm experiencing. But what about you? What are you seeing?
Yeah, it's, we like to, in our like little group of, consultants, we like to talk about how, the models are moving so much faster than the adoption.
Yeah.
And, that's scary on and of its own. I feel like, Chicken Little, where, my desire is to just get people skilled up. It's like, you have to understand how this stuff works because it's going to impact you one way or another. And dabbling isn't good enough. And like grabbing a prompt here or there isn't good enough. So I think it's shocking at how, slow the adoption is, but not shocking when human behavior, right?
Yeah. And so then that creates a whole nother situation where, let's say a company is adopting on a monthly basis instead of a daily basis. In 12 months, they're going to get leapfrogged by the next startup in their industry that's their direct competitor.
Exactly.
And they're going to get blown out of the water in terms of cost basis and staffing and all the functional areas of the business, and the way that the machines can do it much quicker than the humans can do it. So that's my concern for the legacy businesses.
Yeah, I agree. Is that, every legacy business is under threat of disruption, and they were before. We've seen major disruptions, and we know what causes those oftentimes, but I think it's more so now. And even mid-sized businesses, I don't think it's just our large, our enterprise legacies that this is going to impact. I think anywhere where an organization decides that this is a market that they're interested in, and they have an AI first sort of approach and get everybody skilled up and get AI going, they can threaten those industries. There's still the people part of it that we can rely on depending on the space and where those relationships will make a difference. But I think that's going to create and continue to create uncertainty in our spaces. But yet legacy businesses can protect themselves to a certain extent by just skilling up their people, right?
Yeah,
like getting in on this thing and let's get going, right?
Yep. And it is. And it's, I like that. It's got to be the believer and push it, and then get the training scheduled. Well, how do they schedule training with you, Yvette? What do they got to do to find you?
The easiest thing you can do is you can go to our website at xpromos.com/AI, and you can find out more about what we're doing. You can also find me on LinkedIn under Yvette Brown, and would love to connect with anybody who'd like to know more about upskilling and, get your teams and cohorts in there and get going.
All right. Well, if you're listening and you haven't, you got to get started. That's for sure. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for spending some time with me.
It's always a pleasure to chat with you.
I appreciate it. I hope you have a great day, and hang on just for a second while I close this out. Thanks.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Yvette. Well, it's a great reminder that the upskilling and the people part is the next objective for businesses for the AI adoption and implementation. And it's critical to get help from an outside agency that can help direct your change management team and identify some areas of education, both for the individual contributors and then also for the business in general. I hope you found value from the conversation today. Also hope that you take some time to upskill yourself, find some tools or read and understand how to improve your interactions with your GPT that you're the most familiar with. Also hope that with the time that you save, that you spend that time with your friends or your family, and that you get outside in nature, away from the screens. This is Emmanuel Rose, Marketing in the Age of AI.
Thanks for listening to Marketing in the Age of AI. Be sure to subscribe wherever you heard this podcast so you never miss a future episode. Your copy of Authentic Marketing in the Age of AI is available at Amazon.com or EmmanuelRose.com. You can also connect with Emmanuel on LinkedIn. Thanks again for listening,